Hello, everybody. Just letting people come in. I know some of you have been waiting already. So, welcome. Some of you may know me. My name is Gabriel Axel Montes. I've been in the Singularity Net community for quite a number of years. I think I was the first member of the community channel. I'm the super admin still to this day. There's great people taking care of that channel now, much more than I am. So it's a pleasure to be on here again. I've been on the Decentralized Consciousness series on Singularity Net channel. You may have seen that. If you haven't, feel free to go check that out, where I speak a bit about my background and kind of some of the theories that I've studied and shared with the community. So I am here to basically talk about a new project that I'm spearheading. It's called Pathform. So it's probably the first time a lot of you have heard that name. If not, maybe I've kind of mentioned it cryptically or in the community channel before. So I'll talk a little bit about it today, just as an introduction, and we'll continue a dialogue. I'll do some more content in the coming weeks and beyond that as well. So Pathform is basically the coming to fruition of kind of the different streams in my background and kind of my passions, which is as a neuroscientist and as a consciousness researcher and a practitioner explorer. So Pathform basically takes the kind of a bigger understanding of consciousness and the potentials of consciousness in the human system, and kind of even beyond that, if you will, when we're thinking about engineering artificial general intelligence, and fusing that with basically some of the biggest problems we have. We're in a complex world now, much more complex than we evolved to be in. So our information ecology is rich, it's noisy, it's complicated in addition to being complex. And so we're in a bit of a pickle civilizationally. We have existential risk. We've got runaway AI risk, which SingularityNet is doing a great job in its own right of trying to mitigate. And then we've got also other things, like basically the way we've engineered civilization for the past 10,000 years, if not more, is just not ready. It wasn't really prepared for the natural fluctuations in planetary, ecosystemic dynamics like climate, etc. And we've also engineered things like nuclear war, and so there's a lot of tribalism and greed and these kind of negative energies in the world today, and humans are causing a lot of the disruption in our environment around us, and it's affecting our technology. And when I take a step back and I think about consciousness, I think about the world that we're creating for our children, engineering beneficial AI and AGI. I think that there's something there waiting to be fused, that has been waiting to be fused up until this moment, and that's what Pathform is. So Pathform is basically an app that's platform agnostic, starting with a mobile app that is geared towards introducing consciousness shifting interventions and practices to users and participants over time in a way that is integrated with their day-to-day life and work. And an initial focus audience or focal audience that is, we're going to be looking at and exploring and targeting are developers and programmers and technical professionals in general, dealing with advanced technologies like AI, crypto, blockchain, and so on. And I'll explain why in a moment. And then with those consciousness practices that are integrated into daily life in an increasingly seamless manner, we'll take the kind of resulted changes in the mind of the participants, and we'll bring the participants into collaborative conversation and dialogue to see what can be done about the world's biggest issues. So we'll take folks that have been exposed to these kind of consciousness interventions and practices, and then put them into kind of a crucible of conscious collaboration and co-creation, where they can collaborate as a community on thinking about what are potential ways to address these larger issues in actionable ways. The experiment there being what happens when you take people who've been exposed to elevated and more kind of nuanced and refined states of consciousness and get them to think about the world's biggest problems. That is what Pathform is. The reason that we are targeting programmers in this project and developers and really technical professionals in general. And again, the Pathform is for everybody, ultimately. That said, an initial focal audience that we're sort of very interested in is the technical professional audience. That's because technical professionals, programmers, developers are at the front lines of the new economy, the future of technology and its interaction with humans, with our children, and their future lives, and so on. And they're basically, these technologies are basically an existential risk bearing tool and activity. So the programmers are directly involved in creating the future technological components that are going to be interacting with humans and bringing on singularitarian and advanced technological futures. So if the consciousness of programmers, developers, and technical professionals in particular shift, then there's going to be a specific outsized impact on them. Now, existential risk is a matter that concerns everybody, and not just people working on AI. So the thing is that if we go for everybody without any special audience, then it's, imagine an existential risk like climate. Everyone needs to be on board with all that sort of stuff, like getting into consciousness shifting, collaboration. If you're dealing with an existential risk like nuclear war, you're talking about governments and leaders, and the everyday people are not directly connected with that. AI, though, you can tap into the decentralized community of programmers and have them involved in these consciousness exercises. So now I want to go a level deeper here. And there's a lot to unpack because I'm kind of front loading the general picture and how it all ties together. It's like think about it like a multifaceted jewel. It's got multiple sides to it. So the thing with consciousness now is that so far in the world, consciousness is treated like a lifestyle thing. Like if you get into consciousness, you either have to change your entire life and you go to the Himalayas or you become a monk, or you basically become a bit reclusive and kind of go into your own mind all the time. So it becomes an entire life path that's kind of like almost prescribed. That's how it's been for a long time. If it's not that, it's often a lifestyle change within kind of our consumer culture. So you get into wellness modalities, you start meditating, you start doing mindfulness meditation, which is kind of pitched as this catch-all approach to dealing with higher consciousness. And now we're starting to see a renaissance of the interest in psychedelics, which are very accessible, if you know how to source them and where they're legal, I suppose. There's an interest in that. And the kind of attitude to that is a bit of like, these mental health and psychedelics and mindfulness and all these things are interesting and we should be interested in them. We should value them. We should take care of our mental health. I would argue that this is still the first wave. We're in the first wave of looking at this. Consciousness is much more interesting and complex than kind of a one-size-fits-all. Here, go meditate, be happy, go to a yoga spa, do yoga poses, warrior 1, warrior 2, go sit on a mat and meditate, go join a cult. These install a new belief system that helps you feel safe from the world. These are all interesting and valuable stepping stones. That said, there's a lot more out there, in consciousness. And pretty much that's what I've been studying and practicing for many, many years. So Pathform, drum roll, is heralding the era of precision consciousness. Precision consciousness, what does that exactly mean? So precision consciousness aims to do for consciousness what precision medicine does to medicine. So precision medicine takes into account targeted interventions for specific things in the body and in the human system, rather than one size fits all. Right? Okay, take this thing, it'll help all your problems. Rather than doing it that way, imagine what genomics has done for medicine as an example. It's allowed us to understand the particulars of diseases, disease pathways, pathologies, redefine disease categories. For precision consciousness, there's a huge opportunity to do targeted practices that open specific zones and latent spaces of mind. This has not been explored at all, really, in an earnest way that is grounded in or informed or grounded by neuroscience, and that is pursued in earnest. Right now, people go and meditate, they do yoga, it has an effect on their lives, and it kind of just goes wherever it goes. So precision consciousness takes into account the effects of very particular practices, not just sitting down and meditating, but what happens if you want to expand a particular capacity, like your capacity to process emotions in a healthy way, process specific kinds of emotion, amplify those. Let's say that you're a heady type. What happens if you want to specifically expand your ability to feel a bit more connected to other human beings, or your ability to be grounded and to feel confidence, for example? Those are all specific practices, and there are ways to stimulate the neuroendocrine system to produce basically a unique sort of effect on the mind and body for all those things. And I'm only really just scratching the surface. There are a lot of specific practices with specific effects that are worth mapping and understanding. Why is that interesting? Well, I've kind of already mentioned a piece of it, which is rather than one size fits all mindfulness meditation and so on, you get very particular tailored practices. And that allows a greater diversity, a greater ability for people to self-discover their own paths by experimenting with different micro practices. So again, rather than letting consciousness turn into this a wellness lifestyle necessarily, out of necessity, what can be done, and this is what Pathform will utilize, is what I call micro practices or micro interventions. Micro practices are basically practices that take anywhere from 30 seconds to 4 to 5 minutes max or so. And there's something you can weave in and out of your day. And with practice, you can do them while you are working, or while you are playing with your kids, or while you're doing whatever it is, while you're coding. And there are different kinds of practices that you'll be able to utilize, and it'll be tailored to the specific kind of need or interest that you have, or experimental direction that you're going in. So micro practices are things that you can just kind of take almost like pill size, and that have strong effect because they're concentrated. Perhaps at some point and in the beginning of it all, you can sort of do it for 30 minutes, 25 minutes, like every now and then, or in the first time, to see what it's like and immerse yourself. That said, over time, to integrate this with life, which is important, doing micro practices throughout the day, or keeping it as an online background thing you do while you walk, so to speak, is crucial to having an effect on the world, so that you aren't necessarily going to be kind of forced to just become a monk, unless you choose that freely, or to basically dedicate more and more and more of your life to being a yoga enthusiast. And you take hours out of your day or whatever, or your week to do these things. Rather, we're kind of at a time where the world is experiencing a high degree of existential risk. And we need our best minds and our best hearts to be applied to these issues, rather than kind of being secluded in your own zone. You might say, well, doesn't whoever's doing these things, it'll have an effect on their life anyway, right? So why do we need to drive it in a certain direction? Well, what we want to do is offer these micro practices to the community, and also offering it with some focus to these technical professionals, and then kind of start to kind of facilitate the collaborative effort of a community to addressing specific issues and elevating kind of the frequency of the conversation, if you will. And then from that collaborative dynamic, allowing new projects to form, and allowing kind of mini spin-offs, sort of collabothons, if you will, where people get together and solve our biggest issues to create a better world for our children. So there's another layer to all this. And there's, I want to kind of, there's things worth touching on, including my background, what brought me here to be the kind of the spearhead of this project, how it got connected with SingularityNet at some point as well. Ben Gertzel and I have been working together for a bit since we met over 5 years ago now. And we've had friendly collaboration on academic papers and so on. I've been a community member longer than I've been spent some time working in SingularityNet as well during the initial token launch, as well as working on people and governance processes and human resource stuff inside the company. I think that my background in neuroscience and consciousness development kind of hit an interesting point when I met Ben with his interest in building beneficial AGI. So this is a unique opportunity to really seize a unique moment in history fusing AI building and building of AGI architectures with consciousness. So part of the idea as well is that this app would over time help see and guide users into states that are really useful for them, determined by where they want to go. And they can choose how to follow these recommendation systems. And eventually the AI can even create its own practices once it's sufficiently capable enough of doing that. So I'm just checking out some of the comments here. A lot have been coming in and I've been flowing, so thanks, appreciate your patience. So interesting combination of personal transformational practices and global problem solving, says Onama Robin. Yep, thank you. It's it'll be a lot of fun. And of course there's a great sort of thing to touch on, which is, skepticism of why consciousness development deserves extra attention, or why we should have an app kind of telling us what to do and what to develop. And the idea is really to crowdsource human ingenuity and people's uniqueness of paths. And this will help build better and stronger, beneficial, benevolent AGI in the back end. So this project is being done in partnership with SingularityNet. It's going to be something that informs the creation of beneficial AGI. And there's potentially a lot of synergy with other aspects, other projects in the SingularityNet ecosystem. Some of those discussions have already begun and been underway, and synergies have been sort of confirmed and established. And others remain to be explored as, Pathform gets off the ground on its own right, in a sense. Just tapping in. Tapping into some of these excellent questions here. So great thing. So the next step in Pathform really is to develop this app. So the practices exist. There'll be some practices coming up on the Pathform YouTube channel. So in the description below, there's a link to the Pathform YouTube channel. There's also a link to the Twitter account, which is all pretty fresh. So go ahead and check out the YouTube channel, the Twitter, the website to get notified. Pretty soon we'll be sharing a kind of light paper with the community, so you're kind of more informed about that. So stay tuned for information about that. And building the app to the level that we want will take some time. I mean, the micro practices can be made accessible. In the near future, the idea is to basically make community facilitation immediately available to people, so we can begin the processes of talking around these complex issues already as a community, even before itself is kind of out there. And then also kind of sharing some basic practices on the YouTube channel, so you can get an idea of what we're talking about here and sort of how it'll interface. So there's another piece of Pathform that's worth mentioning right now, which is that the micro practices initially are going to be this thing that people pay attention to and practice and do. There's also the intention to kind of just do And micro practices are a kind of micro intervention, right? Where like technically we're offering a tool that you can use that intervenes, so to speak, in your regular flow of ordinary consciousness and life experience. The other piece of this is that the micro practices are kind of one style of doing it, and micro interventions will take advantage of the science of multisensory integration in the brain, which is basically what I did my PhD in, which is the science of bodily self-consciousness. How does the brain construct the sense of self, the sense of bodily boundaries, based upon the timing and the spatial dynamics of multisensory input, internal bodily input, sight, sounds, and so on, tactile, touch, etc. Taking the science of this and developing subtle interventions that could basically be used to completely revolutionize the domain of experience design that's used across many industries. So the brain has many ways of inputting into its cognition to kind of facilitate new states of consciousness. If you kind of sit and do a practice for a few minutes or a longer time, there will be an effect, right? That said, if you kind of imagine you're in a virtual environment and your senses are tailored in a way that produces a certain kind of experience, you can kind of craft experience design in a new way. Currently, experience design does utilize some principles of human psychology, like pleasure, pain. Like when you go to, people know that when you go to a horror movie, there's trying to inflict a certain kind of experience on you, for example, or a romance or whatever it is, a thriller. Those are all kind of different. They're producing different like hormonal cocktails in the body, if you will, or neurotransmitter cocktails. With the science of bodily self-consciousness, you can tailor multisensory stimuli to be a little bit more particular and generate certain states of consciousness. So as long as the user is kind of aware of what's happening, and that it's guaranteed to go into a beneficial direction, there's a huge potential to kind of, with facilitation of the different industry members, to bring a revolution, a huge paradigm shift to the realm of experience design. So Pathform is not just another entrant into the market of well-being. It's not just another Headspace or Calm or whatever app, or even a VR tripping, wellness app. Those are all important and valuable, and we're really grateful that those have been here to this point. Pathform is basically anticipating and heralding the next wave, the next generation of these things, where once you have the code of understanding the bodily self-consciousness and be able to codify it into multi-sensory configurations, you could basically package that as an SDK or API that then goes into various industries and their customer experiences. And obviously the stuff that's released in there would only be the stuff that is able to kind of codify beneficial experiences. And this is part of why the community facilitation is really important. There's going to be a lot of conversation around what the effects of all these things are on governance, on how communities spin off into different projects, DAOs. This is all going to be part of the conversation. And not only the decentralized community, that is the best kind of like, an entry point and a way to grow. That's like the most fertile garden bed, if you will, the decentralized community and the developers and programmers. There's another piece to that, which is that our existential issues in the world are also being affected greatly by centralized entities. And so the facilitation process of thinking together from different states of consciousness and kind of education as well on the dynamics that sabotage our thinking. It's important for this to be increasingly accessible beyond kind of like the people who are initially very attracted to it. So it's something that is really democratic also in its reach to different kinds of stakeholders. The app will have biosensing. It will have a heart rate monitoring, and we will be incorporating EEG into it. It's a key piece of it, and allowing the developers increasingly over time to tinker with the app in different ways. There's also another aspect of this, which is that we're actively exploring augmented and virtual reality approaches. So I want to say something as well that's almost equally important to all this and is crucial in the execution, is that we're in partnership and in deep collaboration with an organization called World System Solution. Pathform is in this with World System Solution. There's a link in the description to WSS. They have something called the Social Movement Engine, and World System Solutions is looking at a completely new way to look at existential risk. Existential risk, whether you're looking at AI, runaway AI, climate, nuclear war, global inequities of any kind, you name it, they're rooted in the same causes. Those causes are human tribalism and egoism, run amok over time. When you combine those with basically explosive human population growth, there's a complexification that happens that sort of like transforms something that served at one point, like maybe a tribe gathering around a fire or tribal members looking after each other, then going through empires and going now into modern and postmodern and post-postmodern society. These are huge topics in themselves. It's become complexified that our information ecology today is pretty toxic. You don't know what you're going to get when you go out there. It's very easy to memify just about any piece of information and turn it into a delivery device that creates images out of information, sort of creating like subtle and deep programming in the human brain. We're in a complex age, and many of us might remember the age before internet and telephones, but a lot of us don't. And in the future, our children won't. Kids will be being born with iPads and eventually neural interfaces. So getting the ability to do proper sense making is huge. That is going to be maybe one of the defining sort of cognitive survival and thrival strategies of the future, is your ability to sense make. Can you make sense of information complexity? In my experience, this is made much easier by accessing certain zones of consciousness that are able to see the connections between things. And this is not only about increasing cognitive capacity, like in a linear way, it's also about expanding what we consider cognition and including the realm of emotions, intuition, non-ordinary states, taking the ability to work with your dreams, lucid dream or dream yoga, if you will, and being able to have that kind of dream logic and creativity online while you're awake. So now we're kind of getting into the meat of it, so to speak. There are certain kinds of intelligences and capacities in the human system that are normally not integrated. And Ben Goertzel himself talks about this concept of cognitive synergy, in which different types of cognition, different types of memory become integrated to fuse to create AGI. So to create AGI, you need cognitive synergy. To create AGI that is beyond the ordinary state of human intelligence, of human general intelligence, you need non-ordinary consciousness as well, and an integration and a synergization of not only cognitive states and cognitive abilities, but deeper emotional, intuitive, interoceptive perception of your body, perception of your deep kind of creative capacity, and fusing that with the logical mind. And then to address ethical issues, you also need the beneficial, kind of compassionate, empathetic, joyful states that tap into higher frequency, so to speak, human states, and not only just stay there, which is what happens. And you'll see, this is a whole amazing topic, but it's very easy for people to get trapped in this state. Oh, I want to stay in this bubble. That's where I want to be, in this state of joy all the time. And when that happens, they get disconnected from their body. So you want to integrate that. So it's kind of like a suffusion of your grounded, integrated, on the ground awareness with also your ability to be in a state of kind of open-hearted compassion, clear-headedness, sense-making, etc. So I'm describing kind of a canvas of what's possible to be integrated here. And the idea is to create a map of this and to help make this accessible, democratized, and so on. So World System Solutions is a company, is a nonprofit organization that helps to think about these deeper roots of tribalism and egoism as a causes of our existential risk today. If you look at the invention of the water bottle, that would seem like a great idea at the time, but now we're getting to the point of basically the water that goes into the water bottles that's then packaged and sold to us. That water is full of microplastics, not only because of the plastic container it's in, getting microplastics into the water inside of it, because the plastic bottles have polluted our water table so much that the microplastics are in the water that then gets packaged into the bottle before it's in the bottle. So this is a paradigmatic example. What is the water bottle that is being developed in green technology today, in AI, across different industries and verticals? What are those water bottles? Because they're the creation of these things without a consideration of their downline consequences is the result of a learning disability. It's the result of people rushing things out to market because the materials around them are there and they're ready to be made. There is a synchronized, cohesive meta-awareness across a giant community, ideally, especially a global one, because we have global issues today that affect us all and are incumbent upon us all. We're lacking that kind of a sheet that connects the information integration across everybody and the kind of cognitive capacities that allow that kind of thinking, so we can have that kind of foresight to prevent those kinds of inventions that are really just almost like knee-jerk inventions. Like, oh yeah, we could package water. How great. What do we have? Oh, we got plastic. We got supply chains. Yeah, let's just pump this out, throw it out there, be the first to market, and now we're billionaires. So that global system of profit maximization above everything else. Economics, mutual agreements, voluntary agreements, awesome. Profit maximization above the common good for what's needed in our world today. I mean, we have a choice, right? We have a choice. What world do you want to create for your kids? That's sort of what drives me into Pathform, to coming up with these things. And World System Solutions is a great, I highly encourage everyone to check out their social movement engine. They'll be involved in Pathform, some of the community facilitation. Their main focus is climate change. That said, I've been in discussion with them quite a lot, and they understand that the causes of all existential risk are the same. So part of it is facilitating a new way of learning that isn't based in us versus them, or me, mine versus theirs. Let me just pause here and take a look at the comments. Yeah, so the whole revolution in experience design. I just wanted one more thing. This isn't just a next wellness app. This isn't just another, community thing. It's a fusion of all these things. It's a fusion of taking of the nuance in consciousness, merging transcendent consciousness and cosmic consciousness with the immanent and grounded, and expanding the offerings to targeted, individualized, personalized direction, allowing tinkering, building a map, building a Rosetta Stone between consciousness and cognitive architectures that allow us to then inform beneficial AGI building. So it's all these things happening together. So it's a bit of a blue ocean strategy in terms of kind of just pure market offering. Once you've got micro interventions locked down that are based in the science of bodily self-consciousness, that's a revolution in across many industries. So it's there's no real competitor to this, nor am I really that interested in that, because the value proposition here is kind of like a subterranean linkage between different things that alone is hard to kind of qualify or quantify. So you're the community, and you're the first ones that'll be exposed and can try this stuff out and undergo some facilitation. So welcome aboard. Let's check out some of the questions here. Let me see. It's a sensitive point. Tiwa says, it's a sensitive point, but wartime, for example, has always been a massive speed up in progression of humans. Yes, it is. Shock therapy is always going to bring out some of the worst and best things in humans. Humans are great at, when you galvanize forces against one common purpose, even if it's an enemy. Unfortunately, humans can come together under that, and under all the propaganda that goes out for that. We can also, when we're kind of low on resources, we know how to compromise. We know how to kind of come together a little bit more. So yes, high pressure situations do create some interesting opportunities for collaboration. There's a book called A Paradise Built in Hell, which is kind of like to this point of when you have this high pressurization dynamic, beautiful things can emerge in these kind of disaster situations. When there's a hurricane that kind of, decimates a town or something like that, people can come together in new ways and kind of rebuild and think from scratch. We're going to be forced into this with what's coming in our world and the complexity due to climate change and so on, and AI, because we are pumping out AI very, very fast beyond the ability of ethics to keep up with it. This is something I've talked with Ben Gertzel a lot about. And it's important that the ethical conversation can keep up with it. And part of the motivation for elevating consciousness and offering tools to whoever freely chooses to use it, no one is forced, is that you raise the bar for yourself. Like once you realize that there's certain kinds of consciousness you have access to and you can incorporate in your daily life, whenever AI is pitched to you as being fully conscious and fully human, you'll be like, but does it have that ability? No, right? So no, it's not there yet. So then you have a kind of a healthy sense of, no, this is not there yet. And how is it going to get there? Is it taking into account a beneficial use of these things? Do we just want to open these abilities for AI to be used in any way? No, we need to have safe ushering. We have to have a conscious kind of building in a right direction for people to have the choice to say, yeah, I want to build this in a good direction. That's what I choose to do. Let's see. Yep, there is a Telegram community that's brand new. Also in the link, check it out in the description. Yeah, so tribalism, so Onama Robin again says tribalism can work in this kind of model if it's compassionate, cooperative in nature. Violent imperial tribalism, on the other hand, is not ideal for AI-driven global abundance coming. It's a fair point, for sure. Tribalism in its very nature is a way of cooperating that sees things in terms of us versus them. It's totally okay to allow to see where there's alignment in terms of mission and stuff with other folks and see it that way. But in general, tribalism and egoism courses through all human beings. So it's not a thing about, we don't want to necessarily create, we have the values that we like and they don't. Ideally, helping the whole world means everybody kind of being lifted like all boats on a tide. So tribalism as a learning mechanism breeds inbreeding and silos, and that's how all that stuff happens. Even if you tribalize decentralized communities, that could be kind of a point. It's subtle. It's very subtle. That said, keeping your heart open to general human currents of compassion and empathy is beneficial. Tribe could be a safe container in the beginning. That said, the global scale of our problems now really, really, really require something beyond that. It's not an adequate learning mechanisms. There are too many pitfalls along that road. People we consider safe to be around, people we don't consider safe to be around. All those things, when they're under pressure, when they're under survival pressure, will come to a head. It'll be like certain people that you'll save, certain people that you won't save if it comes to life to death. We need to really break out of these kinds of patterns, because it'll be at that point in probably within this century that we're going to experience more and more of those very high pressurization dynamics. So let's see. Yep. Good stuff. Lots and lots of comments coming through. Hard to address them all. Actually, when I scroll down, it scrolls up because there's more and more comments. Yeah, one of the interesting things that could happen here, and I'm totally speculating here, there's certainly a potential for something like what you see in Dynasets from the Singularity DAO perspective. That's certainly a point of inspiration for taking people's individual paths and kind of pairing them together in complementary ways. So I haven't discussed yet the economics of this, the tokenomics of this for on purpose, because this is a whole new vista, a whole new horizon. Any discussion of tokenomics and economics needs a lot of consideration, and that discussion has already begun as to what the potentials are there. That said, Pathform won't commit to any particular tokenomic structure or tokenomics as a model until it is very clear that the incentives are aligned in a way that doesn't breed things like cult of personality for individual practitioners, like following particular people because their practices are the best. There needs to be a way for all that stuff to kind of be just some safeguards for the system to not be rigged and gamed, because we're talking about something here that has a lot of high potential for impact. So we want to make sure that that is mitigated the best way possible. So that'll unfold when it does, if and when there is the proper tokenomic model developed, or whatever the economic model is, that'll be announced. Until then, it's a process of growth and facilitation and engagement of the community. Just reading through here. Some interesting comments and some skepticism about the approach of fixing people's thoughts. No one's forcing anyone to do anything. There is no thought fixing. It's opening capacities for people that people can explore and apply their individual personalities to that, or vice versa. So what the practice does when it combines with you, that's your laboratory experiment. And you don't have to do all of the practices that are you're going to resonate with what resonates for you. So there is a lot more freedom in this than might seem the case to some folks. So this is something to think about. Somebody asked, isn't Mindplex more apt for this? Well, Mindplex is an entire kind of content creation and all that stuff, different mechanism. The name for the Mindplex publication came from a term that Ben invented in 2003, and that he and I wrote about in a couple of our academic papers and chapters. You can check that out. There's a book chapter called Mindplex for Non-Ordinary Consciousness and Artificial General Intelligence, where we talk about the fusion of AI and consciousness, human consciousness, and what that could look like when the AIs and humans are operating in the same theater of awareness. Mindplex, the publication, currently has not really anything to do with that per se, the concept. That said, we all know how synergistic Singularity Net projects can be, right? So it's been fun working in Singularity Net in the past, and also being in the community before, and then now again kind of being in the community more formally. So this is really a kind of a community project. There is potential synergy with, somebody says, Waring says, I think this is something related to Rejuve. Yeah, Rejuve is kind of like this aging biomedical approach, as you all know. Pathform is more like the kind of mercurial, alchemical, mental process, and then quantifying all that with biometrics, and then offering guidance and suggestions to users on practices they can do. And every user has their own garden, forking paths that they can experiment with. There is a lot of potential for kind of a combination or a synergy there. That's all those things. We can talk about all that in the meantime, and there's nothing formal yet there established. I think we're at a point where all these big things with big implications need to be thought through carefully, and not just like willy-nilly. Let's just take this company and put it together with this other company. It'll be great, won't it? It's gonna be like thought out and all that. Okay, so scrolling through this. Yep, somebody posted, Peter Elfrink. Thank you, Peter. The link to the Mindplex article that Ben and I wrote. That's it. Yeah. Coordinated social media. So if out of control social media, this is Mac for a day. If out of control social media is making tribalism worse, coordinated social media could make it better. Yeah, so there's a Mindplex element there in terms of the Mindplex, the project. I'm not speaking about Mindplex, the concept necessarily. Part of Pathform is kind of getting into the collaborative conversations and seeing what emerges from that. There's a lot of magic that can happen when there's kind of mutual understanding. People are coming from a common place, and we're not always just thinking on our feet, trying to battle each other on the battlefield of social media. If you look at Twitter now, it's kind of devolved into just flame wars, and the way people talk to each other. Not my bag personally, I gotta say. A long time ago, many years ago now, I kind of established a rule to myself that I've been pretty good about sticking to, and it's worked for me personally to keep not only my social media clean, but also my friendships clean and my own mind clean. Is to talk to people on social media and online like I would in real life. That means I don't just say things like that because I'm behind a keyboard. Really think, is this how I would say it to them if I were with them in person? And if I'm going to write it out, be respectful, and that really helps a ton. It helps a ton. So there's so much evolution to happen in the realm of how we talk to each other on social media, how social media happens, how can we reduce barriers to conscious collaboration, check our supposed expertise at the door, what we think we're good at, who we are. The problems of our world today require some really, really new stuff, really, really new modes of interaction and co-creation that is not just competitive, like who is going to have the better solution than the other person, but how can we do things in a way that's synergized together and is relatively orchestrated without becoming some sort of a Borg, right? That's not what we're going for. We're going in a way of harmonizing the freedom of choice of everybody and empowering people's choice-making ability. So you can more clearly see, if you make this choice, those are probably the downline consequences. If you make this other choice, those are probably the downline consequences. Now, given that kind of visibility, which you may not have had before, we did this facilitation and consciousness stuff. Given that visibility, which way are you going to go? Choice is yours. No judgment. Just think about it. Feel it out. Good stuff in the comments. More about Doppelbow, if I pronounce that correctly, more about how Pathform will enhance AGI, please. Well, yes, just to kind of recap very quickly, kind of the stuff I was saying earlier about how to create beneficial AI, truly beneficial AI, takes into account deeper aspects of human consciousness. If those are not revealed or unearthed or accessed or practiced, they cannot be analyzed by a system that is building AGI. So SingularityNet, our partners, cannot build full AGI without having like nice, clean, consciousness, loving interaction of human beings data. It can have regular human interaction data, but it won't have stuff that's kind of where people can experiment with their own kind of consciousness and see what the results are. So that's the beauty of this. It's a kind of an experiment, and at the same time we're saying, guys, check out that direction, right? So hopefully it won't be like herding cats, because people are free and can do what they want. That said, we're gonna say, hey, this is a great, awesome direction to go in. Let's check it out. So while Pathform is happening and people's consciousness states are going into the app, people can choose to kind of share that data in the SingularityNet ecosystem as they like. That informs the development of AGI. Development of AGI and better AI services and SingularityNet will then go into Pathform. So, in informing kind of the evolution of micro practices, the suggestions of which practices should follow another one for a user. Oh, hey, you're really enjoying these practices. These other ones would be up your alley. Or, hey, like, here's all of human consciousness. You're only kind of exploring left field. Why don't you go right field a little bit too? So let's do complementary stuff. So it's kind of a step-by-step ratcheting of building AGI together with consciousness in human beings. Nothing like that has ever been done before. Somebody asked, how about Pathform and Sophia DAO? Well, interestingly, part of the vision for Sophia DAO had a lot of my contributions in it, in addition to having some other folks in it too. So a lot of that coevolution of AGI and human kind of decision making in games, I wrote a lot of that stuff out. So, and a lot of that came from a similar place that inspires Pathform. Sophia DAO is not my baby, so that's some other folks are involved in that now primarily. But Pathform is my baby. Let's see what else we got. Instead of using our data to sell us stuff, we could use it to help people know how better to treat each other. Yep, bingo. Bingo. That's it. That's the most important thing. That's also an interesting thing, is I'm here like talking about this interesting idea without talking about tokenomics, right? Because a lot of folks are going to be like, yeah, how can I make a quick buck on this? We get it. We know that that's, a thing, right? We're not ignoring that. We're only suggesting with Pathform that kind of like think about the future, think about what our information ecology has done to us, think about the limits of how the world conditions our consciousness into kind of an ordinary state. Wake, eat, work, eat, sleep, repeat, that whole thing without exploring the nuance. How different could the world be if there was a nice offering that helps people get into different states and cultivate different traits? And developers are getting engaged in this. Not only it could be open source developers, of course, in our community. It could also be developers in any company. It could be developers working in Google. Great. What usually happens is that when these developers start getting exposed to these kind of practices, they kind of first stay in their job and kind of just try to find the groove in their job, and eventually oftentimes they kind of leave because their ethical awareness opens up too. And so in a way, we're kind of Trojan horsing this stuff to anybody, any developer anywhere, not just only the kind of like awesome fun tribe of our decentralized communities, but beyond that as well. Really interested as well in what kind of solutions generation the community will come up with when they're motivated by the benefit of humankind and the planet. What kind of interesting projects can spin up there, spinning up and spinning down projects according to certain actions. That's something that we're going to do as World System Solutions, and I look forward to bringing them in conversation soon around this project. Well, we already are in conversation. I mean, to the community. Rob says, can you clarify what this is exactly? It sounds like you're saying it's a brainwave app that deals with social issues. Yeah, totally understand. So think about it like two sides of one coin. The two-sided coin was discovered as hey, the world's biggest social issues, if you zoom out, the world's biggest issues, it's not only social issues. Yes, it is social, but it's like socio-political, socio-economic, I like to think about it as collective issues that are caused by patterns of learning that just are not rooted in our full consciousness potential. So what happens if on the one side, we have an app that helps users get into interesting and more expansive, joyful, grounded, well-rounded, and interesting states of consciousness. That has benefit in and of itself, right? Someone could stop there and it's like fun and great and cool. That's going to be different enough from what's currently out there. Even if you cared nothing about the social issues, you could stick there, have your own individual life, individual path, and enjoy the consciousness micro practices, interventions, which are going to be way beyond the current set of market offerings in that realm. The other side of the coin is because the consciousness and our collective issues are linked, they're enacting each other. It's not like we're just isolated in our room and we're not affecting the world. That's an illusion. Because they're linked, what if the stuff happening on this side of the coin, meaning the people engaged in different practices, what if that then got sort of fed into a collaborative environment where people can co-create solutions for future world problems together. Imagine if we have hackathons specifically for solving these big issues, sponsored by potentially some of the world's biggest crypto companies. Imagine that. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about. So the reason we think those kinds of things are separate, the social and the individual, is because modern life has done that to us. The nuclear family, building four walls, a cube that we're in, like I'm in right now, where I'm individual and I'm away from the world. And so I can look out my window, literally and figuratively, and live vicariously while the whole world dies. To quote a lyric that of a song that I won't name. If you got it, you got it. So there is a big connection, and it has to do with our mind stream. It has to do, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. So it has to do with our mind stream. It has to do with the kind of things we pay attention to, the kind of how our minds are affected by the advertisements, what we engage with online, how we treat each other at the end of the day, and what we choose to prioritize. What I've noticed is if once you radiate care, compassion, and centeredness, people experience subtle forms of healing and feeling better that they don't even understand themselves. Once you interact with people the way you would like them to interact with you, there's an effect that kind of like reverberates, like everyone's a tuning fork and the frequencies start to vibrate, and their minds may not understand because they've been living in the grind for so long, but gradually that vibration will start to shake off like dust, the stuff that's been accumulating on them, and they'll kind of light up a little bit more. So that's part of, so I'll pause there. I hope that answers that question. A lot of great comments coming in. Yep, Tina Thompson. What about unconditional love concept from the AGI conference? It was talked about on day 2 with the Loving AI folks. Yeah, Julia Mossbridge. Shout out to Julia. Yeah, I've known Julia for a bit. She's doing great work. There's definitely a connection there. Julia and I and others were on the AGI ethics panel, which is it's the last hour and 20 minutes, hour and 17 minutes actually, of day 2 of the conference, of the AGI conference. Check out that video if you haven't already. If you look at day 2, go to the contents in the description and check out Julia's awesome talk, and check out also the last ethics panel where Julia was on there, I was on there, we riffed on each other. Julia mentioned an interesting concept. She said struggling to building what we struggle to be. And then I flipped it on its head, and we were chatting at the last panel and afterwards, being what we struggle to build. Both are important. They both need to be prioritized. So a part of consciousness interventions is not just like, hey, how can I develop psychical abilities? Or how can I develop, how can I radiate, confidence? There is that. And we're going to support all that. It's also learning about unconditional love. Yes, that is really important. Can you hold a space almost like in the center of sunny weather and stormy weather, where there's an equal ability to smile and be wholesome amidst those changing polarities? Doing it first at like kind of a basic elemental level that's not even interpersonal can be helpful. That said, humans are capable of unconditional love and compassion towards each other. It doesn't mean not having boundaries. It doesn't mean letting people attack you. It doesn't mean letting negative influences have an effect on you. It just means recognizing that we're all kind of in this together, and that it's worth connecting to that light source inside of all of us, that lamp. My friend and colleague, John Jones, who's a founder of WSS, uses the analogy of those kind of sky lamps, like from Batman or from car dealerships or whatever, that shine to the clouds. If you have that. If you look at that, we all have that inside ourselves. And what happens is that over life experience, we take a bucket of sand and dump it. And life takes a bucket of sand and dumps it to us. There's still sand on it, but you can see the light shining through like rays. The light is very strong. So the idea is to uncover it. Some people say waking down, not waking up. So you wake down by removing layers of stuff that's on you so you can kind of go back into your core. Hey, I want to build an education startup, not a school or just a tech platform, community structure and tools for kids to optimally learn whatever they want with games like Synthesis to build skills. Yes. Yeah, Synthesis is doing some interesting work there. I think education is going to be huge. Part of Pathform via WSS, World System Solutions, will involve education and facilitation to those who are interested, for sure. And I think the world of our children's future is hugely important. So education for kids, doing work in that area is fantastic. Thanks so much for mentioning that. Scrolling through the comments. Thanks everyone for digesting all this stuff. Yeah, thank you, Tina. It's super important. Peter shared the link. I think it's to the without clicking on it myself, I think it's to the AGI conference day 2. Thanks a lot, Peter. And in future talks, I'll kind of dig into the app more. I'll be sharing a light paper as well, so everyone can take a look at that. Great. So here's a short. Someone asked, could you give us one short exercise? Yeah, sure. So I'm going to give you one of the most basic exercises that everyone can do. You don't have to kind of like stop what you're doing. So just basically connect to your pelvic floor right now. I'll do it in a very casual way. So feel free to sit comfortably straight. You can just chill out however you are right now. As you're breathing, as you're looking at the screen, as you kind of see your panorama in your room or your phone, wherever you are, start to breathe deeply into your belly. Imagine your belly expanding like a balloon in all directions. First downward, then outward. In all directions. Let the inhalation be smooth, kind of like a wave transitioning to the exhalation. You don't have to lengthen it on purpose if you don't want to. Just imagine like you got a nice little water balloon filling at the tap, kind of grounding you to your seat. And see if you can keep that going while you are engaging on this call, on this live stream. And see if, so normally what would happen is, this would be the way that a more mindfulness kind of centered approach would do it, is like, okay, everyone stop what you're doing. Sit straight. Sit straight, get serious, close your eyes, tune into the divine light inside you, and breathe deeply into your belly. That's useful. That said, I kind of want to show how you don't have to stop what you're doing necessarily. Closing your eyes and tuning into your inner nature is generally very useful. That said, micro practices are things that you can keep your eyes closed to do and also open to doing. Keep your eyes open while you're doing it. So keeping your deep belly breathing going automatically increases your parasympathetic nervous system activity. So it's not just paying attention to your breath, it's also breathing downward, almost as if like your lungs are extending into your legs and down into the earth below you. Any way Pathform could eventually involve brain interface tech? Absolutely. Pathform is going to have biosensing capabilities. So right now, we are engaging with different potential hardware partners and collaborators to allow brainwave measurement. That's going to be something that we develop with Pathform. And that'll open entire vistas, entire potentials. How long do corrections usually last? Days, weeks, months? By corrections, you mean, that's Máximo Hernández. ¿Qué es lo que quieres decir? I'm assuming you might speak Spanish based on your name. Spanish is my native language. So yeah, by the way, there's an entire developer community in Latin America and Spain that's totally untapped. We can definitely go into that realm. So here's the thing. The more you do this stuff, the more it's going to ingrain in your nervous system and your endocrine system. So yes, time is actually an important factor. We are showing micro practices. That said, the idea is to learn to keep these things going in the background while you do stuff. Your ability to keep them going in the background will go up the more you do them. Like the more that you spend time in it to like, so sometimes it's nice to shut off the environment and be like, okay, like I'm doing the exercise, and then you go out into the world and then you mix it, and pretty quickly the world will take over and you'll forget you did the practice. So that's how people can be pretty decent meditators, let's say, but be complete jerks when they step off their cushion. And so it happens all the time. So that's part of integrating awareness, is like the pathway in the brain and the nervous system that links your mindful self-reflection ability is very much overlapping the pathway that deals with social empathizing and theory of mind. So you really have to kind of get those two going together. So when you look at someone else, you kind of look at them as compassionately as you would yourself. When that's not happening, there's a ton of projection going on. So it's quite easy to judge other people very harshly when the more judgment you have going on. It's not always a one-to-one correlation. I'm not insisting on that. I'm just saying the way your nervous system resonates within yourself is going to have an impact on how you see the world and how you interpret the world. And it's not that you won't react to stimuli that you don't like in the world. It's that you'll choose how to respond, because you know that there's multiple wavelengths you can tap into. Like there'll be a sea of noise, and then you just choose, okay, like this person is saying all this stuff, they're coming at me, they're talking at me from different places in their body. I can kind of see it. I'm going to choose to respond from this area. Love the practice. Thanks. It was super brief, by the way, and I'm just kind of keeping it going while I talk, even though I'm talking. So my breathing won't be as smooth as yours since you're not talking. When will you be doing the next update? Soon, hopefully next week. Let's see. Stay tuned. We'll definitely announce it. We go into the state to reset. Meso asked, do we go into the state to reset or with a preset goal? Good question. You can do both. I would say the ability to reset is a nice one to like immerse yourself in, because you kind of like want to let go of the stuff that's already running in your head in the background. It is nice to have an idea of what the practice does, because that does give you like a little, like it calibrates your compass a little bit. So, oh yeah, I'm going for this. But you don't want that to be a distraction either. Like, oh, why am I not there yet? Go into self-judgment, or I'm trying to imagine my way there and then not actually achieve it at the actual bodily level. So it could be tricky, the goal thing. A lot of it is just about experiencing it, seeing how it is for you, and then learning a little bit about what it kind of can do, and then finding a healthy balance there. What does my shirt say? Metaphysica. It's got a few Greek philosophers on it. Aristotle, Plato, Heraclitus, and Pythagoras. The Greek philosophers. Some of them. Scrolling down, we should probably wrap it up soonish. We can talk a lot more next time. And each time we talk, we'll kind of synthesize a lot of the things we talked about. I'll talk a little bit more about my background, I think, next time as well, or in a future talk. The reason for that is because I really think it's important to help you guys kind of grasp a little bit why this isn't just a product. It's kind of like my entire life energy is just basically being given a microphone, and that's what this is. So there's like a flame that's just there all the time. going into it. And I think it's useful for people to understand where I'm coming from as a founder, as CEO of this thing. So it's not just a blabber on about myself. I'm not super into that. That said, I think giving you some examples of experiences of some things I've observed, which a lot of it I've kind of already done, could be useful. And then the community process itself will go on in more synchronization over time. There is another practice that we can do, and I'll do it in more detail later. In another talk, in one of the future videos. Definitely hit subscribe on the description to the Pathform YouTube channel. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers on that, we can live stream there as well. So that's something I'm looking forward to. There'll be micro practice things put up on there. Oh, there's already one video on the Pathform YouTube channel, which is the last bit, the AGI ethics panel. I put that up there from the AGI conference. Thanks, everyone. And so you guys are enjoying it, it seems. This is slightly off topic, but could this project help figure out if consciousness is dependent on biological substrate or if it can be transferred to a non-biological one, says Gonzalo Aidos. Well, yes, actually. So if you read the Mindplex article that Ben and I wrote, basically to see what can, okay, so here's a key thesis. I'm going to speak something to, this is also going to land, I think, for people that are not normally interested in consciousness in the way that I've been talking about, but rather are just interested in the singularity and mind uploading. It's going to be very useful as we continue to cyborgify ourselves and to transfer consciousness into non-biological substrates or mind upload or what have you. Those things in the beginning are going to be kind of like one-way trips to Mars, right? Like they're kind of experimental. And the more that you have fractalized your awareness, meaning the more holistic your awareness is, and it's not fragmentable because its fragments have been united and healed. The more that's happening, the less chances your mind will have of fragmenting as it gets uploaded or transferred to another substrate. So there's a very, very, very practical reason to get involved in some of these practices and some of these approaches, because as we interact with more complex technology, whether it's just in our world out there or it's in our, we're literally connected, brain interface style, it'll be important to understand your mind, have a lay of your land, so that when you're experiencing a transfer, you can experience what aspects of your mind are being affected. So it's important to have psychological consciousness sovereignty. That doesn't mean that you're an individualist about your consciousness. It just means you know the boundaries and when things are coming in, when things are coming out, almost like a cell sending out little vesicles in and out. So this could help us figure out what is turnable into a non-biological substrate in terms of consciousness. I think the main thing in the beginning for a while will be just AGI, beneficial AGI. I am a supporter of the importance of building beneficial AGI in the next 4 years by 2025, seed AGI. And Pathform is being born in part to facilitate that, do its part as much as possible. It's super mission critical to the Singularity Net vision. For all those who are here from the Singularity Net community. So keep that in mind. It's super aligned with the mission. Cool. So one more little exercise I want to share with everyone. Normally when we look out at the world, we're looking at it from like our 5 senses, which kind of are all present here, right? Your sight is here, your ability to speak, your hear, touch is everywhere. That said, your head is where everything kind of converges. So we look at the world through our head, kind of like between our eyes. See if you can drop your awareness to your heart area and then move it back like you're receding on railroad tracks to the back of your heart. And see if you can look at the world from the back of your heart. Elevator of awareness going down. See if you can have your deep belly breathing going like you were before, and look at the world through the back of your heart. You might notice some shifts in the way you feel, in the way you see things. Imagine like you're looking from the back of the heart through the heart itself, and everything is kind of seen more from the heart-centered perspective. And see if you can look at the world from even other parts of your body, like from your belly, from your pelvic area, as if you're looking from your back of the heart and the heart at the same time. So you're integrating awarenesses into a more heart-centered perspective. The back of the heart is the more invariant part of your awareness. It's the part of your awareness that is pretty much there throughout your whole life, where your mind and your life process can change as you learn and unlearn things. The area in the back of your heart is kind of like this geographical location where you could place awareness. There's no like actual thing there at a gross physical level that you're in. It's just that when you put your awareness in different parts of your body, you access different sort of lenses of viewing things from. And it happens to be that when you look from your life from there, and you look at your interactions with other people from there, and you imagine other people are looking from there, even if they're not actively doing so, you're connecting with the more invariant part of person. Some people would call it the soul. It's like the part of you that kind of lasts beyond all the changes in your life process. So that's a secular version of accessing your soul. Easy. How long did that take? Like 30 to 45 seconds. Now that was really fast, and I didn't ask anyone to close their eyes, etc. We're just doing it right now. And maybe some of you still remember how to do deep belly breathing at the same time you do that. That fundamentally is all going to change your physiological state, and that could be easily measured. Now, will it be more immersive if you close your eyes, sit up straight, not have to be listening to me as this is going on? Yes. That said, it's something that takes practice. So, and I've done plenty of that as well. So it's kind of like if you weight train a lot for years, and then eventually all you got to do is do like 1 or 2 sets, and you keep the muscle memory. It's kind of like that. All right, everybody. I think we've been talking for a good amount of time. Thank you. I like these exercises. It says beach picnic joy. Beach picnic joy. That's an exercise in and of itself. Just imagining that scene. Picnic on a beach, experiencing joy. That itself will take you to a good place. So something also positive you could do, this is also a practice, because they're quite easy to do. Once you kind of tap into the source of it, you can just take a mental snapshot, like an engram, of who is on this live stream, everyone watching it. Just be aware, like kind of like it's like a mental snapshot. And just notice what it feels like to be all watching the same thing together, whatever it is. It's a watch party. Notice the interest of people, the people watching, what drove them to even be on this channel in the first place, regardless of how much they resonate with the idea, how much they think, what about this? What about my tokens? What about this or that? I'm not sure. Or, oh, I love this, I love that. All the different perspectives, a giant tapestry. Take a snapshot of that. Keep looking from your back of your heart, deep belly breathing, and just kind of just notice it. Be like, yeah, we're all together doing something that's interesting. And just, if you like, give everyone kind of like a hello from your internal awareness. You don't even have to say it. Just kind of like a gratitude of, hey, cool, we're all here together. That has a subtle unifying effect. Just even at a very conscious, like subtle level. So consciousness is intertwined with the fabric of all of reality. Subtle changes in thoughts have subtle changes in a lot of different things, even if they're just microscopic. But when people do them together, the effect is quite profound. So that's a loaded statement, right? Yeah, there's a lot to say about the philosophy of consciousness. That could be for a future talk. But to try to separate consciousness from the fabric of the universe would be in a violent act. Actually, it's almost impossible. There's nothing in the universe that doesn't have some sort of a energetic fabric, which is conscious on some level. And conscious doesn't mean that it looks at the world like a human does. It is just alive in a way that you cannot say is completely unconscious. No one can really prove that. So this definitely sparks endorphins. Apple will relieve suffering. Awesome. Shadow integration. Yeah, totally. Shadow integration. When we talk about tribalism and ego that are affecting our world, shadow integration is important. Realizing your shadow, realizing tribalism, ego, greed, judgmentalism, narcissism in yourself, healing that as you help the world heal it. It's almost useless to try to want something to be healed in the world if you're not working on it yourself. Panpsychism, maybe, kind of. I think about it in the term used by Alfred North Whitehead called pan-experientialism. Panpsychism is similar. It just has a bit of a connotation that everything is kind of aware in a way like humans are. And humans don't really understand their awareness at its basic form, like the core of awareness, the kind of luminosity, luminous kind of just beingness that is at the core. It has very little to do with your structure of your brain. And most of the time when we think of psyche, brain, consciousness, awareness, we think of things that are like human because we're unable to kind of peel back the layers. So that raw luminous phenomenality, which is just light, is basically E equals mc squared, to be honest. That's what's at the base of everything. And then the more complex things are and organisms are, the more sophisticated their consciousness is. Yeah, happy to keep talking, guys. Let's stay in touch. Yeah, this is growing and it's going to grow really fast. So buckle up. And ideally, it'll feel slow and fast at the same time, or rather still and fast, like a nuclear reactor where it's still and you're sitting in a seat and you can do your practices while the periphery moves, and there's like quantum leaps and things that happen. So buckle up. This is going to be a fun journey. I would say for now, stay tuned to the Telegram. The link is below. Check out World System Solutions, so the social movement engine. Subscribe to the YouTube channel Pathform so we can get on there. There's Twitter if you do that. And there's a link to the website. There's a get notified link on the website. Light paper is not there yet. That said, go sign up there, and we don't spam or anything. So yeah, keep an eye on the socials for sure. And we'll do more conversations. These conversations are almost hard to stop because they kind of become expansive and relevant to everything. If you ever unground and thinking about these kind of concepts, connect to your feet, connect to the earth below you. If you have trouble grounding, buy yourself a grounding mat that you connect to the grounding plug in the outlet. Go barefoot on the earth, feel the elements around you. There's a lot of exercises you do around that, which are great for the heady types, which I was for a lot of my life. So. All right, guys, we're going to call it a day or an evening. Thanks so much for tuning in. May all your minds and hearts seek the common good and the greater good in everything. It's great to just be in conversation with all of you. We've got a really great community here. So rock on, and good night. And thanks for everyone to help to pull this together. So till next time. See ya.